Sponzorem této epizody je sázková kancelář Betano.
Krejčí a to je Dočkal, který pálí gól! Pravo nebo levo, to je věšák a Sparta vede!
Sparťanky a Sparťani, je mojí milou povinností vás uvítat u další epizody podcastu Sparťanských novin. My se vám opět vítáme ze studia Loud and Clear v Praze na Vinohradech, za což děkujeme především Oldovi Hajlichovi, který se o toto krásné studio stará. A samozřejmě děkujeme i vám, všem našim posluchačům, že nás posloucháte, že si předplácíte naše Hero, kde samozřejmě bude ke shlédnutí celá epizoda tohoto dílu. So, I will switch right now to the English. Christian Clarup,
yes.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
That you joined us. It's a pleasure for us, as always. And I would start with the name of your function. It's a head of performance.
Yes.
It might sound a little abstract for our listeners. Could you tell a little more about your position?
Yes. Yes, it is a little bit abstract, and it's also personally I don't worry too much about titles and what it is called, but that's the role I have. Which means that I started like a classical fitness coach, the guy who did like just the warm-ups and gym and stuff like that. I think that's how every guy in my business started. Then I developed more into being responsible for a department. That's why you're head of something, and then we use the English terms, so you can be head of sports science, strength and conditioning, and then the biggest head, the chief, you call him head of performance, which means I run the whole department with all the guys and is responsible for that. So that's why they call it head of performance.
Our knowledge about the sports science is quite limited. Basically, the only thing we learned from Malas when he was here on one of the episodes. We used to have in Sparta just a few fitness coaches. As Malas, I can remember Tomáš Stransky, he was a masseur, and Rada and others. How strongly is the whole department you are the head of required nowadays?
First of all, it's very nice that Malas taught you some stuff, because he's a very smart guy and he's a good fitness coach, and I'm lucky to have him in my department. He's been, first of all, in Sparta for a very long period, and he's doing a very good job. So the most important for building a performance department or a fitness department, whatever you like to call it, is to have different people with different areas where they're really good in, which means that Malas is extremely good on the fitness part. He's very good on getting our players who were a little bit injured back into team trainings. Then I make sure we have a guy who's a sports scientist, which means he's very good with data, numbers, statistics, providing me with that. He's a lot better than me in that aspect, that's why he's there. Then we bring in a guy who's very good in nutrition. Then we have all the medical part. We have all the physios and all the stuff. So it's important in the department that we don't have a lot of guys who can do the same stuff, or girls. We only have guys in our department. They can also be ladies. But have different roles with different responsibilities. And I try to find staff that are better than me in certain elements, because that will lift the level. Because if I was the best at everything, we would just be like average and not really good in some stuff, and that's why I need to manage it a little bit more.
Yeah, let me have a follow-up question. Malas told us that sports science is one of the areas of football that has developed the most over the recent years. You're also in the football business for like a decade, even more. Could you tell us about the progress, and maybe for us who are not in the soccer so much, as fans, how it has developed?
Yes, it's 100% correct that development has been increased a lot. A lot more scientific research has been done. Also, Malas has done a lot of research. That's really nice. I'm lucky I'm from Denmark, and in Denmark there's a very strong research group who makes a lot of the scientific work. So I'm out of that school. So we were just lucky because Denmark is, like the Czech Republic, a quite small country. So everybody knows everybody, and you have direct access to the newest science, and that's really nice. So when I started fitness coaching in football 15 years ago, we had heart rate belts, and that was pretty much it. And that's what we used. And then we found out that heart rate is maybe not the most important component in football, because when you do sprint training, for instance, the heart rate is not a very good measurement of the intensity. Then you introduce GPS systems. They were not very good in the beginning. They did not measure very precisely. They got better and better. And then slowly you just introduce more and more and more equipment into the club, so we can be as informed as possible, and not only based on subjective, what does the football coach think, or what does the player think, or what do I think, and stuff like that.
Let's take us back 18 months ago when
Yes.
you came to Sparta.
Yes.
What did you need to implement at first?
First of all, we brought in new staff. So Malas is the only original guy who's left from before we arrived in the fitness department. Everybody else was changed. So we brought in a new sports scientist. We brought in a new nutritionist. We just added a full-time doctor to the club as well. So we made a lot of changes. Actually, in Sparta, they had a lot of the equipment I like to use. Then the question is not only about having the tools and equipment, but also use it, and also understand how to use it and how to look into the data so we can go the right direction.
So in other words, there was certain level of know-how and you just bring something extra to it?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I can only talk about Malas because he's the guy who was there, and he has a lot of know-how. And then, of course, we need to make a bridge between the performance of fitness department and the technical staff, which means Brian and Lars, and at that point Lupas as well, and now it's Lucas, the Danish guy. And of course, it's easy for me because I came with Brian. I worked with Brian for many years, so it was very plug and play. I know what he likes and vice versa. But the most important was to get the fitness department to collaborate with the technical staff, so things are connected.
You said there are a lot of specialists in your department. Could you maybe introduce them one by one? Because not many people are familiar
With the names.
Yeah, with the names
Yes.
and what they do.
Yes. So we talked a lot about Thomas Malas. He's our fitness coach, head fitness coach in Sparta. He supports me with some gym work, training with the team, and then he has a big responsibility with players if they get a little bit injured and they need to get ready for team training again. So he does a lot of individual fitness training with the players. If we have players who are, for instance, in this weekend, Lucas Sadilek, as you all know, he's out with a red card. Well, that doesn't mean he has a day off or a weekend off. It means he just have individual training, and then Malas, he will take care of that. So we make sure that all the guys who's not playing, they are up to the fitness standards that we want. So he will do that. Then secondly, he's a very well-educated man. He's with the Charles University. He's teaching there as well, has a PhD. So he also helped me with some of the scientific elements to keep me up to date, so I don't have to know everything all the time. Then we got Kirk Phillips, who's a Scottish guy who worked with me in Denmark. He's a sports scientist, so he has a master in sports science, but he's very good in data collecting, analyzing data, presenting the data that I would like. Then we got Tom Shaw, English guy, who we brought in last winter, who's a performance nutritionist, so he takes care of the individual nutrition for the players and the overall nutrition for the team. Then we actually have one more guy, Matt Omni, who's also a sports scientist like Kirk. He's also with the B team, but he's also helping out the first team. So they do a lot of the stuff that I need around the team. And then we have the second branch of the department, which is the medical and physio side, where we brought in Philip as the head of medical, a doctor, which means we have a full-time doctor in Sparta now every day. Before we had a very good collaboration with the military hospital and the doctors there, but they also have other jobs to do, so it lifts the standard a lot that we have one. And then we have all the physios, of course.
Just to clarify, the doctor is the guy who takes care, for example, of the like all the check-ins, all the vitamins, prescriptions, or like what does he do full time?
The vitamins will be mostly the nutritionists who take care of that, providing the supplements that the guys, and that could be vitamins. Then he does all the medical stuff, so it can be illness, it can be injuries, it can be assessment. So it can be everything from a player with a fever, coughing, he will take care of that. Then we need checking if some guys get whatever injury it can be injury on the joint, it can be injury on the muscle. He will take care of like the early rehabilitation, coordinate with all the guys what kind of test in x-rays, scans, whatever we need. And then he needs to provide me with a lot of feedback for the players so we can make the plans for return to play.
I think it's time to switch from the staff squad to the players right now, because we want to evaluate the players as well. When you came, what was the base of the players, of their readiness to play the top level? Because all of them are professional athletes for I would say, all of their life, but you have to enhance their level on even higher prepositions. Yeah.
Yeah, let me further explain that. When you came, I remember that one of the first interviews you and Brian did, is said we need, I think it was two or three transfer periods to shape the team in the physical and the personal stuff, so we have them up to the standard of the game we want. So we basically ask, how much did it change since then?
Yeah.
Well, so I can't say if they were ready or not to play elite football, because elite football, there's a lot of ways you can be ready. It's all based on the style of play of either the head coach or the club. And Brian, he likes to work with, play with some elements of physical parts for his style of play. Like it could be repressure, high pressure, high backline, stuff like that. And the guys were used to a different way to play. So they were not adapted and ready for the style of play that Brian preferred. So we for sure need to work a lot with the guys. And then, like you said, some type of players are very good in one system based on the tactical inputs. They need physical elements. And then it's easier, of course, when the club finds players that's more suitable for the style of play. So that helps, of course. And then, of course, we work hard on the fitness components that Brian like the guys to do, which is all based on speed, power, accelerations, stuff like that. And it's hard. I think, of course, we do a great job. But I think from the outside, it also... One thing is we objectify a lot of numbers, so we can compare with old numbers, and it looks that we lifted the level already with the players quite a lot. That's pretty nice. But it also seems like that the subjective impression from spectators and fans and people around the club, that they can also see there's a change in the physical output of the team.
We see it as well, because there was a lot of years ago as a benchmark for the physical preparation Slavia Prague, and now we are able to compete with them in the physical aspect. But thus, I read on your LinkedIn feed a few weeks ago that we are not still there on the level we want to be.
No. Of course, we never, because if I just sit down now and say I'm happy and satisfied, then we will stop. And when we stop, we will probably also decrease a little bit. So, like always, we need to stay hungry. We need to look for improvements, because Slavia is a very good physical team, no doubt. Also in Europe, you can see they're able to compete at a very high level. So for us to be minimum at that level, that's also quite satisfying. I don't compare us to Slavia, because we talked a lot with the guys and also inside the club that we are competing in the Czech league for winning it, of course, but we are comparing ourselves with Europe, because that's where we're going to meet teams with a little bit more money than us, or a lot more money, which means that they have the financial power to buy better players, better equipment, whatever it can be. So this is the one we're going to compare ourselves with, also from a physical perspective. So we try to train for the European standards, and then we lift the level.
I have a question. From your words, I understand you're always not satisfied. You're always trying to lift the bar a bit higher. How can you manage so you don't overextend the workload and everything? But because when we talk about that, I always came up to Jack Wilshere, because he was the case. He was maybe a bit overextended in Arsenal. Then he was plagued by the injuries. How do you manage so you don't overextend the players, so you know the limits?
Yeah. First of all, I try to work a little bit long term. It can be hard in senior football, because senior football is about winning. That's how it is. And if we don't win, someone else will come and take our job. Just how it is. But in physical development, we have to think a little bit long term. So physical training is always about having a long term plan, build up the fitness in a safe and smart way. That's why we have all the guys in who are very good in different elements. That's why we do all the data collection with the guys. So we try to be as informed as possible, and then we can actually make decision which is informed based and not just subjective, because you all know, you are football fans, there's a lot of feelings in football, and it's often dependent on do you win or lose. But we can still, from a physical standpoint, do a very good physical performance and then be unlucky and lose a game by a penalty or something a crazy own goal. Whatever can happen. There is elements of luck in football, even though I'm not a big fan of luck. So we have to be informed, be objective as possible, and then try to push and not be controlled by emotions and feelings only.
I think it's like continuous improvement in all the process you are going through with the team, and as you talked about collecting right data and to make the decisions data based, and really to be able to analyze what is happening with, I would say, each player's condition, because it's a lot about individualization of the trainings plan, I would say, right now, because as we can see, the football is really athletic based right now, more than a few years ago.
What we are trying to say is, like, with data you can forecast what is going to happen. So you try to deplete the element of randomness, and also with it, if you would agree or like you have a different theory, you are trying to maximize and identify the individual potential of the player.
Well, for sure we do that. It can be hard to make predictions and forecasting. It can be hard because sometimes things will happen you can't predict. But once you have a lot of data collected, you know what happened, and then you can actually make decisions on what's gonna happen. And that's where it's most important, because sometimes it also is impossible, because we have to play a lot of important games and we also have to win all the games. This is how it is. And then sometimes it can be really hard to only make always the right physical decision, because there's also tactical, there's relationship between the players that will affect the result and stuff like that. But the most important is to know what have we done, and have a plan for what will we do, and then inform the coaches on what they would like to do.
Are there any limitations, or how much can you develop the readiness or the fitness of level of the players? We give you the examples. Even, I don't know, you would be glad not to give the names just to make it easier for the viewers. Let's compare, for example, Adam Karabec, who's way more technical and less physical, and Lukáš Sadílek, who's really like technical,
gifted.
He's like, same as his brother, he's one of the most gifted athletic players in the Czech league we've seen. If you can compare like these two cases.
Like you said, of course, we're not gonna discuss individual players, because that would not be fair of me to discuss that. But we can talk
as a role model.
We can talk about different types of players.
Yes.
So football, from a physical perspective, is very complex. So you have some guys who can cover a lot of meters, but a little bit in the same pace. And then you have guys who are very explosive, but they might fatigue a little bit faster due to the genetic structure of their muscle fibers. So we try to make sure that guys have a minimum level in all the components. So if you have a guy who's very fast, very big, very explosive, he might lack a little bit in endurance. So we try to improve that without destroying the very good components. Then of course you have guys who are very good tactically or technically, like you talk about, and they can maybe compensate a little bit for the lack of fitness. But I think it is a case often where young, technically talented football players, they can manage in under 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 because they're technically better than the other guys. The issue is when they grow up and they go into senior football. No one cares about you're the best under 19 because you're competing against guys from different countries, different age groups, and also guys who are technically better than you or physically stronger than you. So you cannot just rely only on your technical or tactical or your physical skills. You need all the components at some kind of standard. And like you just said, guys, football is a lot more athletic than just 5 years, 10 years. You don't have to go further back. And if you sit down and watch an old game of all the heroes that we watch, and an old game can only be just 20 years ago, the pace of the game is really slow compared to today. Then they can say at that time, yeah, it was different. We were better technically, yeah. It's also, my dad also thought his life was tougher than mine. So you also build the memories that you would like to remember. So no players can not just be technically good. They really need to be physically good, especially if you want to play in the best 5 leagues in the world. That's just how it is.
I have one further question. I know that Brian and Lars are trying to work together with Vít Študlar. They are doing like this together academy meetings. Can you, from your position and your department, help somehow with developing of the younger players at Strahov due to the physical things, or is it something that has to do more with the like education policy in the Czech Republic, or how does it work?
But I don't know much about the educational policies in the Czech Republic.
No,
So I don't
what I meant, if you get a player
Yeah.
who's always who's going to the high school,
Yes.
and his teachers have a lot of influence over how much he moves and some things like that, and always overall physical readiness. Is it something you can, from your position, when that guy plays in Sparta, that can help you, or is it mostly on the school system?
Well, first of all, like you said, Brian and Lars start collaborating with the academy, but also the physical department. We moved down and is taking care of the academy, trying to implement more of the stuff, so the players get more ready for first team football. So that structure is already in an ongoing process, and with collaboration of with Mr. Levitska as a case is one of them. So we're doing restructuring in the physical department of the academy now. We're bringing in some new staff members and adding more equipment, more manpower and stuff like that. Then of course there is some stuff, like you said, outside the school system or the schedule. From if you only look at a training football perspective, can be a little bit challenging because it's not aligned completely at the moment. The guys are really working hard on it from Sparta. If you can't change, that's just how it is. But for instance, the way the system works in Denmark is that if the boys go to a high school, they have a good collaboration with the club, which means they organize the schedules around the football training. So they have early morning football session or physical training, whatever it can be. Then they go to school, and then in the afternoon they do trainings again. And that's completely aligned, and it's okay. And that makes, of course, easier to develop football players. Then you also have to take into consideration that a not very big percentage of the boys will actually be elite football players. So of course they need a good educational foundation so they can handle themselves after football.
Let's link up this topic with Sparta Prague for a while. Does Sparta help that we got a reserve team in second tier league?
It is the perfect model. That's, if we reflect back on what I said, that's where the Danish system is really missing, because when they're done with youth, then you have to go directly into the first team, and that can be really hard for an under 19 player. So a Sparta under 19 player going directly into the first team of Sparta, the chances are not very big. So it's very nice to have one more step where it is still senior football, it is still competitive football, and then you have 1 or 2 more seasons where you can develop the players, both from a tactical perspective and also from a physical perspective, because there is a big difference between the physical status of an under 19 player and a senior player. That's just how it is. So of course it's really great for the club that we have more time to develop the young players, and also give the options that when they stay in the club, that some of the young guys, they can train more with the first team. You saw some of the guys went on training camp with us, and they get more adapted to the speed of the training, the intensity of the training, and stuff like that.
One more question.
Okay.
Are even the newcomers like Mokrovic or Horak comparable with the first team players on a physical level? I mean, no, definitely not.
Is it due to the age?
Of course, is about age. There is the big difference between young players and senior players is like this: the size, the strength, the speed, the power. So it takes time to develop. So of course it is age, and then of course it's also, if you, even though you try your maximum effort and you train in an environment with a little bit smaller guys, a little bit slower guys, then you're not pushed all the way to the limit always. That's why training up, which means that, for instance, Mukrovic trained with the first team on the training camp, is very good for him, because it would lift his level, the pace of the game and stuff like that. And it also sometimes is an eye-opener for the young guys, because they're used to being told by friends and agents and every coaches, you're the best player in the whole world. Then they come up and then they find out maybe they're not the best player yet, so I need to work even harder to get there.
Okay. Let's move on. We've been discussing the analyzing of the results we are going through. And tell me, what are the main indicators or parameters you are watching either on yearly or even daily basis?
Yes. Well, that's a long story, because we track a lot of things, also daily, weekly, monthly, stuff like that. So We, of course, look at the internal response of the players, which means heart rate. How fast is the heart beating when we do certain exercises? And there's certain periods during the week we would like the players to be in high intense and stuff like that. That's number one. Number two, then we look at the external input, which means what distance are you covering, how fast and how often are you changing pace and stuff like that with the GPS. Then we collect a subjective feedback from the players every morning where they reply to a questionnaire. So when they wake up in the morning, they tell me how fatigued they are, how ready they are to training, muscle soreness and stuff like that. And they answer based on a phone, and it comes into my little dashboard so I can see it. That's nice because then I get a complete overview of the whole squad and not only the guys I speak with. The next part is very nice. I can also see what did the guy say 1 week or 2 weeks ago, because I can't remember that. It's impossible to remember. So that's very nice. Then we look at jump data for the guys. We have some 4 stacks, and it's just like a platform where you jump and then you can measure all different kind of things. And that's a nice tool for whatever test we do. It can be a drop jump. It can be just maximum jump height for how fresh is the players. Because if you're a little bit tired, you can't jump so fast or you can't jump so high. So that's a nice tool. Then we also like to see if the guys are actually getting stronger. Can they jump higher? Can they jump faster, develop power faster? Then we measure some different muscle strength components, mostly on the muscle groups where the guys normally have issues when you're a football player. So it's the hamstrings and it's the adductors, the one you use to squeeze, and also the guys, the muscle that push out. That's the most important, because look at the calf and all kind of things. So we measure that also. And then we collect all these data points, put them into big Excel sheets, and Power BI is a system we use as well. And then we have a centralized database where everything goes into combined with a medical record.
Okay. What about, for example, the more scientific ones like VO2 max and I would say cardiac input into the muscles, if you can generate force in a long period of time, because, you know, players need to cover 90 minutes and to repeat every single movement for a long time in a high level. Is it something what you are working with as well?
I think, I don't know if I would define VO2 max as being more scientific than the other part, because the other part is probably the more important components in football, where VO2 max is nice for us to see if the guys have endurance, aerobic capacity. But we also know from the football science and research that VO2 max is not a very good indicator of how many high intense meters you cover during a match. That could be maybe more like a interval-based running test, like I use the yo-yo. You can use other versions like that. But we do the VO2 max with the players in the summer and in the winter, because number one, I need that maximum heart rate, because otherwise I can't use the heart rate data. Then number two, we need to see if the basic foundation for endurance is there, because it will affect the ability to recover and stuff like that. So we also use that.
Okay, and what about, for example, lactate threshold? Are you trying to enhance this aspect?
Yes, and that's somewhere we really can see our players have improved a lot, is when we do, for instance, the VO2 max test. We will also look for the anaerobic threshold. What speed does the player hit that? And the faster you can run before it is just a certain level of lactate in the muscles that you're looking for. The faster you can run before you hit that, then the better you are to work before you go into the anaerobic state. And we really lifted that level of the players.
How long period you need so you can backtrack a progress? So this is just a methodology progress. Do you need like 1 month, 3 months? Because you said you're working with a data bank, even from the previous versions of the... what's the name of your department? Performance department.
Yes.
So how long period do you need to see a progress?
If you have to look to something that is significant and not only trends or coincidence, you need a very big data set. So it's very nice for me. We have data from some of the players for 2 years, 3 years, and even more, because they did the faculty testing before I came. We also have some GPS data. So that's really nice. But once we have collected data, half a season, a whole season, then we really can start to see which way is it actually going. Of course, we can see some acute response. And for me, the best measurement for our performance is the match data. How fast is the players able to run in the games? How many sprint meters can they do? How many high intense meters? That is the number one indicator, 100%.
You already mentioned the yo-yo intermediate test, which is
Fan's
favorite. So the first time since you came, could you see a progress? Because I think that Honza Meida could reach 35 levels. You wrote it then in the summer, and Lukáš Sadilek now did 39. Are all the players exceeding themselves? Can you see the progress? Which is even for us fans, it's really visible that you can see that they can run more.
Yes, they are getting better, and it's because in the yo-yo, we use the one you call yo-yo IR2, which because there's different
IR2 level 2.
Yes, there's different versions. There's an endurance-based, there's an interval-based recovery and stuff like that. We use number 2. There's a lot of scientific reasons why, but that doesn't matter. All the guys in general are getting better, and that's because they are able to do more repeated high-intense work, which means their anaerobic system is getting a lot better compared to before. Anaerobic just means you can work in a period without oxygen being available in the muscles. And that is really important for the guys to do repeated accelerations, sprints, and stuff like that. So when you see the players, they try to chase the ball and they have to go really high speed for 5, 6, 7 seconds. That's what this one really can help us to see if the guys are able to do this.
That's something what's really crazy, because I try to run with my players on tier level 4, 4th league in Czech Republic, and I try to run with them level 1, and we reach like 35, and I said, "Oh, Sadia got like 39. We are not that bad," but I now heard that it's level 2. So that's the point where I was
because level 1 starts at a very low pace. And level 2 starts a lot faster, so the speed is pushed very high. So the best elite players I've seen, the level 1 they complete it. They just finish it. It's not a problem. And then there's some like really running freaks who can also almost complete level 2. We're not quite there yet, but that's the big difference between lower league football and elite football. It's not so much about the total distance. Of course, there's a difference, but it is the pace of the meters they're covering. So we are running a lot faster, and it's also what you can see. They made some nice studies with the Premier League that over time the total distance in the games did not really change on average, but the high intense meters, the sprint meters, it changed like 30 and 50% over 10 years, and that's the difference.
Because it's 20 plus 20 meters, I think.
Yes.
So it's like 40 meters per the level you reach, so it's not that big distance that you run during the test. And what about a I would say mental setup, because sometimes it's about the player's composure and determination.
It's like all tests you do, it's about your mental approach. It can also be a test in the school. Some guys or girls are really good at doing exams, not because they're really well prepared, but because they're mentally set up to do it. And some who did really well during the year get really nervous and afraid, and then they get a bad grade. This is how it is. And fitness testing is also, there's big components of the ability to prepare yourself for it, because it's going to be a little bit tough. It's not going to be that nice, and sometimes when you're a football guy, it can be a little bit hard. Even though we try to explain why are we doing the test, we're using it for planning your training, the team training, it can still be, there's lack levels of motivation compared to playing a game, because it's more fun to play games. That's how it is. It's not fun to do. It's not fun to do a running test. It's just how it is.
So basically, we are trying to enhance our conditioning during the small-sided game sessions and stuff like that, because the players are more motivated to run during the plays with the ball.
And small-sided games is good for training some fitness components. Then you need medium-sized games. Then you need large-sided games, and then you need maybe isolated components as well to get the guys better.
We've mentioned international football several times. Are there any individuals in the Premier League or like from the place you've coached that really amazed you by your physical side? Yeah,
there's always players who are really good, but the thing is that there's not one player who's been the best in everything. So there's always different elements that they're really working well. But I coach one player back home in Denmark. He's in Brentford now. He's playing the semi-final for Nigeria tonight, Frank Onyedika. Really fast, really strong, could cover a lot of really high intense and sprint meters. And now he's playing in the Premier League and he's doing quite well.
One player I always wanted to ask you about is N'Golo Kante that played for France and Chelsea. Was there someone you could admire from your point of view?
I think in general, if you are good enough to play for I know Chelsea's not doing that well, but my boys really like Chelsea, so
we do.
Yeah, they have a hard time. We actually went to see them play here in the Christmas, but they have a little bit hard time. But when Kanté was there, Chelsea did quite well.
Yeah.
And the French national team did quite well. So of course he has unique fitness components. Otherwise you cannot play for a top Premier League team and a top national team in the world. Of course.
I think next area we want to cover right now is about balancing things, because you need to enhance the player conditionings, but you also need to have them fresh to compete in the match, to balance several aspects. How are you working in this area, for example, with the physio department, which is part of your department?
Yes.
Is it difficult to make it work
What
together?
Vika is trying to say, how important for you is the load management, I think is the right term.
I think, all I do is load management. That's how it is. And so there's, of course, the team structure, then there's the individual structure. And a lot of it is based on the data. There's always subjective feedback from the players that we will listen to. There's always some subjective feedback from the physios, but they are also getting a lot more better into objectifying the things we're doing with different tests and measurements. So it is all about load management, which means that you build your training periods, then you have your microcycle, which is normally a week, then you do a little bit bigger cycle and stuff like that, and then we rotate in between. So this week, for instance, we came back from training camp. The guys had some days off to recover, spend time with the family. Then the first day is adaptation day, where we don't go into big spaces, we get guys ready. Then the next day we push the volume a lot. Then today we take the volume down again, so we get the guys fresh, and then they go into the tactical phase.
I think when you did the interview with Casa for the club podcast, you said that the rest period between the two trainings is basically just about to get your body ready from one training to another. Could you explain that theory for me? Because it's just like a point of view I never heard before.
I can't remember exactly what I said to Casa, but we for sure focus a lot on to make sure the guys recover a lot. If you train with a big volume, which means you train a lot of times, there is a risk that you will train a little bit in the same pace all the time. So I prefer we train with really high intensity when we train, and then we give the guys a lot of time to recover between sessions, so they're fresh. So it's a little bit like if you went out and you did a 10-kilometer run, and you did a 10-kilometer run in the afternoon. Okay, that's fine if you keep a low pace. But if you want to go out and do 10 times 1,000 meters at a high pace in the morning, if you want to do it again in the afternoon, it will be hard for you to keep the pace and the intensity, which means you're not training with the purpose we would like.
One thing about the load management I want to ask. We are going to play like 8 or 9 games in next 30 days.
Yes.
There's a discussion even going internationally if the amount of games isn't, for example, like way too much for the players. Even in the previous years. Are we getting to like the peak, or are we like even overextending what the athlete's body can manage in such a short period of time?
I think you can just look into how is it going with the amount of sprint-related muscle injuries in elite players. It's increasing and increasing. And the best players who play in the English league, for instance, and they also play the national team, and then they play Champions League or EuroLeague, which means they compete all the time at a high level. They have no time to recover. So from a sports science fitness perspective, that is not the structure that is
sustainable.
It's not sustainable right now, and it's for sure not those components that are taken into account. We also have to accept that football is also entertainment. There's a lot of financial powers inside, so probably it's more a financial element that make guys play all the time. That's also why suddenly Spanish team have to fly to parts of the world to play a game, and then you have to fly back, and teams have to fly to the US, play a game, and fly back again. That's not, if you take the perfect world for fitness perspective, that's not possible to do that in a good way.
Yeah. More and more matches creates more and more broadcasts, which creates more and more money and
more
so
revenue.
On. But what about injuries in Sparta? Did it increase, decreased?
What do you guys think?
Decrease.
Yes.
Definitely.
You said 70%?
I don't know if I said 70%, but it increased a lot. It increased.
Decreased
down a lot. So, and that's also why focus on the recovery time to make sure we have the guys ready. We focus a lot on the power training, injury prevention, nutrition, sleep, all that, so we can have a high player availability. Because what is it the head coach he wants? He wants to have the best players ready all the time. Then they also have to be fit and have to be fresh. So we try to balance it out always. Then sometimes we get injuries. That's how it is. We can't compete in elite football in Europe and in the Czech League and in the Cup without having injuries. You can just look at the best teams in the world, how many injuries they have, the Premier League teams. They have injuries all the time.
Yeah, Chelsea, for example.
Real Madrid.
Yes.
Yeah. Out of centre backs.
United, a lot of the teams, they have injuries all the time. So it is really hard to balance, especially when the team has success and the players has success, they will go with national team. Which means where you have a natural break for recovery, they will have to go again. They might play again. They might train in a different way, not because the different way is wrong, but it's just a different way to train, and that affects the body differently.
I know that you can't. There are like several types of injuries. You can't eliminate much injuries altogether. It's not possible. You wouldn't play. You would need to not play a game. Is there any possibility to eliminate off the pitch injuries altogether, like training injuries and lucky stuff?
In general, we often don't get soft tissue injuries, which means muscle injuries. That often we can control that. You can be unlucky that some guys slide on the pitch, have a big stretch, or he pull, or all the numbers look great and he feels great, and then he gets an injury. But in general, the training muscle injuries, we almost never get it. It's not very often, and we just did a preseason now, 5 weeks training, 0 muscle injuries, a little bit with the ankles for guys because they do a twist or they get a tackle. It happens in football. And then, like you said, when you play competitive games, that's where the injuries often happen more than training because the intensity is higher and sometimes we push the players a little bit over the limit. So we can't eliminate the injuries. They will happen also when we play a lot of games.
Yeah, but now we fans are basically satisfied with the situation in the squad.
Well, that's good for us.
Yeah,
Obviously.
because it was a huge pain for years.
Several years.
Yeah.
It was always like, especially after the first half of the season, you get like basically you have more players in the hospital than in the squad. So it has changed.
Is it the criteria when are you picking for new players? I know it's not your job to find new players, but what about checking when they come? For example, Markus Solbakken, he came. Are you doing some medical stuff with him?
Yes, they do a normal medical check like you would do in all clubs where they go to the doctors. They get pictures taken of the joints. The doctors will do different tests, and then we do fitness testing of them as well, running, jumping, muscle power and all that. And then we contact the old club and we get all the records, or the player get it, and then he can give it to us if he wants and stuff like that.
So basically, and also because you and Brian work together for a long time, so he knows what are your requirements for the fitness players, right?
And that's also probably one of the reasons why we have a very low rate of injuries, because there's a very strong collaboration between me and Brian and me and Lars. Because if you just take the fitness department and detach it like a component by itself, and you take the technical department by itself and you work in two silos, then things are completely gonna be mixed up and mashed up, and then you don't know what's going on.
We've signed roughly 20 players during your tenure so far. Who was one of the individuals who was the best during the entry tests? Who was really like on the top physical level?
Well, it depends on what kind of physical level we look at, because a guy like Victor Olatunji, he can jump really high, he can sprint really fast, but maybe he's not the number one in endurance, where, like you talked about Lukas Sadilek, everybody can see he's very high on endurance, but maybe he's lacking a little bit in power. So there's not one guy who's just outstanding in everything. It's not possible. But in general, the guys we get in is quite good from a fitness perspective.
It's about to find the right mixture of the abilities.
Is there something you're working for, like for the future? Some areas you want to even develop even further? Some equipment you want to get? Or
what we need to get even further now is to upgrade the performance department in the data science perspective. Because there's a big difference between sports science and data science. Sports scientists, they understand the football and some scientific stuff, like different data models and stuff like that. But the data science guys, of course, they're a lot better because they're educated in I don't even know the programming and stuff like that. But then maybe they don't know a lot about football. But because we have so much data, we need to improve our data science department. So we need to lift that part. Then of course we need to lift our awareness of like sleeping patterns and stuff like that. That I think that's the two main things right now.
I think we are going into AI age.
Yes.
Is this something what you want to work with, or you will work with, or what is your point?
Yeah, my point is I don't know a lot about it because I'm not a data guy, and I'm also getting a little bit old, so it's a little bit before my time. So that's why I need to find someone who's smarter than me in this aspect, who can actually tell me, we can do this, you can use this, and this can improve this way. So we're setting up a research project with a Danish university regarding data science, and probably AI will be included into that also.
So basically you are open-minded for new things.
I know I don't know everything, and I know if I only did what I used to do, then my career is done, because football changed so much.
Yeah.
Go on.
Just one point. I saw some presentation that you did for the bank.
Yes.
And there was written something like, I don't follow trends, they are set by industry. Is it something what has to do with it? Or
I said that they talked, I went out and talked a little bit about how do I exercise and move and train, and what do I think when, not talking about elite football, but in general population. And I think a lot of the fitness trends is not based on solid scientific research. It is based on how can I earn money. And once your motivation is to earn money and not provide a good product, then sometimes they get a little bit conflicting. So I think that's what I meant. So I don't, like I said, I don't do cold water immersions in the morning and put it on Instagram or whatever guys do now, or they skip meals or whatever is trendy right now. I don't do CrossFit. I did CrossFit before it was called CrossFit, because I'm that old. It was just called circuit training with weights, because we did that where I went. So I just do my stuff, which I like, and it works for me.
But you work on a science department as well. What I mean, I saw on your LinkedIn that you wrote a paper together with Malas. When we tried with the guys together in a group chat, just look into it and said, like, what is it about? What I understood is like when you play football for a long time, you get an asymmetry in your body.
Yes.
So basically one part of your body is stronger than the other side.
Yes.
Could you just explain to us what it's about, so we can see that in Sparta we have also scientists, not just the fitness coaches?
So the thing is, when you play football, like you said, you have a preferred leg, a kicking leg. Most guys is right-legged. Then the opposite leg is a standing leg, and that gives you imbalance in your left and right side on muscle strength. And it's quite simple, because every time you run and you want to shoot, you have to put your supporting foot in, which decelerates, which put a big force on the muscle, which means it gets stronger. Every time you want to do a jump, normally you would prefer to jump on one leg, which is often your standing leg. So you do a lot of things. It's just like if I go shopping, I would carry stuff in my right hand compared to my left hand. So I'm a little bit stronger in my right hand, probably. That's just how it is. Now we know this. We do a different test. We see you can be stronger in left hamstring compared to right hamstring. Then we try to get left hamstring stronger, because we don't want too big of an imbalance. With this one we did with trunk rotation, which means we test the muscle strength in the core, and then hopefully based on that, because what I like is to use the science and then use it practical. We don't do science just to do science. We use it to do training adaptations, or basically yes.
So covering the imbalances, because we all got one.
We got one, and then because football is if you walk normally and run normal, you will always go left, right, left, right, left, right, which is the same. But when you play football, you do different activities with your left side and your right side, because one is kicking and one is standing, and that just gives different muscle forces on your left and right side.
Can it be hurtful if the imbalance is, for example, too big?
Yes, there can be a risk between getting injuries if you have too big muscle imbalance. It can also be on the front side compared to the back side of the muscles and stuff like that. So we try to even the muscle balance. The most important for us is to get the guys strong, because the stronger the muscle are, the less risk for it to break or the knee to buckle or whatever it can be is a lot less.
I think one of the tests on Charles University is the ratio between quad and hamstring.
Yes. In the side pecs.
Yeah.
Yes.
You said that you're working on a sleeping patterns and the rest is also important. How do you rest, Christian?
That's the dark side of moon. I never seen it.
Of course I rest because, as you all know, if you would like to work a lot and you would like to perform as well, if you work all the time, you'll just be average.
Yes.
So of course you need downtime. So, and this is so stereotypical for me to say, I like to work out. I like to go to the gym. So before I came here, I did just 45 minutes of power training just to finish off my day before I went here to get the brain clear and ready. So I like to do that. Then of course I have a very nice family and I like to spend time with my family, especially with my kids and my wife. And that also gives me time to think about other stuff than football. That's really nice. And then it's not rest time, but I'm doing a second master right now from an English university, which is also take my mind off Sparta sometimes. So for me, it's more about moving the focus. That's what I like. I don't like just to
slack off.
Yeah, I think if you ask my wife, she'd probably think that I like to do nothing sometimes, but I like to do different activities.
Tak děkujeme našim posluchačům a posluchačkám, že jste nás doposlouchali až sem. My se teďka vrhneme na Hero část, takže stránky znáte, děkujeme, že nás tam předplácíte, kdo ještě ne, tak můžete, kdykoliv. My vám jednoznačně za podporu děkujeme.
Přesně tak.
I vaše zásluha je to, že tady můžeme mít takový hosty jako například pana Clarupa, takže díky moc.
But I'll have to be honest and say I did not know a lot about Czech football. I know, and that's for sure something that make us non-Czechs feel more welcome.
Is any player allowed to go play, for example, tennis or another sport as leisure during the week, or is it banned?
We're gonna do this now, we're gonna do this now. Where Scandinavians, they don't.
There are many Czech players, they will tell you when they transfer abroad that they are training in higher intensity.
Yes. Yeah. Then you all know, I think most teams enjoy beating Sparta.